Hello, I'm Lexon, and I'm back with military election forecasting. Today I'm going to be making a 2024 presidential election video between incumbent President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump, which are most likely going to be the Democrat and Republican nominees in 2024. So again, I already put out the safe states for both candidates, and some of these states could be safe or likely, but for right now, I just categorize them as being safe. And my categorization of safe is more than 15 for their respective parties, from 5 to 15 being likely, from 1 to 5 being lean, and under 1 being tilt. So again, I'm going to be categorizing the likely states for Donald Trump. And these are states I think he'll win by substantial margins, but I just think they'll be under 15 points. So in Alaska, I'm going to start off with Alaska, Montana, Kansas, Nebraska's first district, Missouri, Mississippi, South Carolina, Indiana, Maine second, Iowa, and Ohio. So in Alaska, Donald Trump only won the state by about 10 points in 2020. And this is a state that's been shifting, pretty left, pretty substantially over a significant amount of time. He'll probably win the state by about maybe 6, 7, 8 in 2024. But Alaska's going to continue shifting left, and it was likely by 2020. In Montana, this is a state Donald Trump won by about 16 points, barely won it by a safe margin. And the state is probably going to continue shifting left as it has been doing for the last couple of election cycles, which means it'll probably drop under 15 points. In Kansas is the state that was likely back in 2020. Kansas has been shifting left faster than basically any state in the country. And with that, I just expect for it to continue happening, and he'll probably win the state by, still double digits or high single digits. Nebraska's first district, the same thing. It was likely back in 2020. It's actually gotten bluer in terms of redistricting, so it's probably going to be, even more competitive, even though this will be somewhat of a pretty sizable win for Donald Trump. In Missouri and Indiana, these are other states that Donald Trump barely won by 15 points. And considering that you've seen a lot of these working class and suburban voters, working class voters that are pro-abortion but still vote Republican, you did see some small narrow shifts amongst these working class voters. And I still expect Donald Trump to win these voters convincingly. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was able to make these states still over 15 points. But for right now, I'm just going to categorize them as being, 14, 13, 14, 15 point wins for Donald Trump. And in Mississippi, this is another state Donald Trump barely won by about 16 points. And Mississippi is one of those states where you're seeing increase in the black population and a decrease in white population. So with higher black turnout, you'll probably see Joe Biden probably gain a point or two. That would be enough to get Mississippi under 15 points for Democrats. I mean, for Republicans. And in South Carolina, this is another state that was likely back in 2020. And similar thing to Mississippi, you're probably going to see more black turnout, and it's going to make South Carolina vote a little bit more Democratic. It'll probably still be 9, 10, maybe 8 points for Donald Trump, but he'll still win by a pretty sizable margin. Iowa and Ohio, Maine second, are more competitive compared to a lot of these other states, including Alaska. Iowa, Donald Trump has made a lot of ground amongst white working class and white rural voters, and that's going to make him win the state by a pretty sizable margin. But again, I still expect it to not be more than 15 points. I think that's really unlikely. In Ohio, very similar thing. He's going to do really well with these white rural, white working class voters. But Joe Biden is probably going to make some gains in the suburbs, and you're going to see higher black turnout in some of these big cities. And it's going to keep Ohio probably stagnant, or might shift it maybe a point to the left. But for right now, it's still going to be a pretty sizable margin for Donald Trump. Maine second, Donald Trump made some significant gains with the white rural voters and the white working class voters in northern Maine, as you can see. And with that, it'll probably make the state vote, the district vote pretty sizably for Republicans in 2024. And again, I'm going to be labeling the likely states for Joe Biden, and those are New Mexico, Minnesota, Maine is a state, New Hampshire, and Virginia. And I also like to categorize Colorado as just safe for Democrats. Democrats won here by 14 and a half with a strong suburban Republican. Donald Trump will probably do, he lost Colorado by about 13 and a half points back in 2020. He'll probably lose it by a little bit over 15 upcoming. So in New Mexico, this is a state that Donald Trump lost by about 11 points in 2020, and with higher Hispanic Latino turnout, you'll probably see the state shift leftward again. So it could be safe, but in my opinion, I think it'd be about probably a 12, 13 point margin. In Minnesota, Donald Trump is going to do pretty well with the white rural and working class voters, but you just seen the Minneapolis area shift dramatically in Democrats' favor as of recently. And, with these shifts is where the most populous counties are. For example, 533,000 votes here, 211,000 votes here. This is where most people live in the state, and that area is shifting left, and it's going to shift Minnesota left. So you're going to see Democrats win by probably a sizable margin. And Nebraska's second district, this is another suburban district where you're seeing Democrats make significant gains. Donald Trump won his district by about 1, 2 points in 2016, just to lose it by about 7 points in 2020, which lets you know how fast the district shifting left. And the district has been drawn to be a little bit more Republican, but it's still a left trending district, so it's not going to necessarily benefit Republicans, especially with these white college educated suburban voters who are very pro-choice and very pro-LGBT rights. And it's something that you saw Republicans take a big hit in the midterms for, which is why I'm confident the district's going to go to Democrats by more than 5 points. In Virginia, this is another state Donald Trump lost by about 10 points in 2020. A little bit more than 10 points. You're going to see higher black turnout. You're going to see these suburban counties shift to the left. And you're going to see Donald Trump do really well in the rural areas, but that's not going to stop the state from shifting even further left. I don't expect Democrats to win by more than 15, but it will probably be a likely margin. In New Hampshire and Maine as a state, very similar demographics. Democrats are going to continue improving amongst these college-educated white voters, which you saw Democrats smack Republicans in both of these states in the midterm elections. These are very pro-choice, very educated voters on average. And even though in some of the rural areas and working class areas you see Republicans improve, but in an actual statewide vote, these states are going to go to Democrats by, a pretty sizable margin. So again, those are the likely states for both parties. Now I'm going to get into the most competitive states and the lean states. And I'm going to start out with the lean states for Donald Trump. And I have two for him. I have him winning Texas by a lean margin, as well as Florida. Going back to 2020, Republicans were able to win Texas by a little bit more than 5.5 points, which made it technically likely. And Donald Trump made huge gains in the Rio Grande Valley. It didn't really cancel out the gains Democrats made in the suburbs and made in the big cities, but that was worth noting. But actually, in the 2022 midterm elections, the only place Beto O'Rourke was able to improve was in the Rio Grande Valley. So um, history shows us that Democrats do better with Hispanic Latino voters. Not Democrats, I'm sorry, incumbent presidents improve amongst Hispanic Latino voters. And Hispanic Latino voters were the only demographic that Democrats improved in 2021, even with weak candidates like Terry McAuliffe and with Phil Murphy doing significantly worse in New Jersey. Democrats improved amongst Hispanic Latino voters in both of those races, and that's how Phil Murphy held on. And in Nevada, Steve Sisolak, even though he lost Nevada, still did better with Hispanic Latino voters than Joe Biden. And it's something you just saw nationwide, excluding Florida. So, and I think obviously you can't compare midterm to presidential elections, but I'm just letting you know that Hispanic Latino voters have a history of shifting to incumbents. So it's more than likely that Joe Biden will improve amongst Hispanic Latino voters than Donald Trump will, like many people expect he will. Um, but I don't think Joe Biden will get the Hispanic Latino turnout necessary to win. He's going to do better in these suburban counties. He'll probably flip Denton County, probably flip Collin County. He'll probably win Fort Worth by a pretty sizable, Tarrant County by a sizable margin. He'll do really well in Williamson County, doing really well in Hayes County. I don't think he'll get the turnout in Houston or Dallas. He'll need to win. I do think that Austin will come out big for him. I think he'll keep making gains in San Antonio, and he'll probably get out the base in El Paso. But as of now, I confidently expect Donald Trump to get out his white rural and working class voters to be able to hold on to maybe a 2, 3 point victory in Texas. And in Florida, this is a state I could see being likely, but for now, I'm just going to categorize it as lean. I doubt that Florida is. I doubt that Florida is as Republican as people make it out to be. I fully categorize Florida as a very Republican-leaning state, but similar to how I view Michigan, I don't think that these states are totally out of reach of Democrats or Republicans. Yes, Donald Trump made sizable gains in Miami-Dade County, but history proves to us that incumbents do benefits voters. I don't think that'll be enough to make up for the deficit in Miami-Dade County. I think that was something that was just more than just incumbent trends, obviously. But Joe Biden's going to do better in Duval County, probably do better in Hillsborough and Pinellas County. He'll do better in these Orlando suburbs. And he's got to probably do better in Broward and Palm Beach. But for the Hispanic Latino voters in Miami-Dade, especially and specifically Cuban voters, which I have think have shifted pretty rightward. I think that Donald Trump can rely on them as well as the white exurban, non-collegiate voters in the Panhandle and just across Florida to be able to give him a pretty sizable margin in the state. So those are the lean states for Donald Trump. And for the lean states for Joe Biden, these states are going to put him over the top at 270. We have Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, as well as Wisconsin. So basically, all the Biden states in 2020, I expect to go to Joe Biden by a lean margin. So in Nevada, going back to 2022, you saw the Democrats were able to nearly hold on in this race. And I do want to point out that this was uh, Senate race instead of the presidential, but still a federal race. And yes, Catherine Cortez Masto is substantially stronger to stand than Joe Biden. But Democrats were able to nearly hold on here, even with bad Hispanic Latino turnout and not good turnout in the Las Vegas area. And even Steve Sisolak was able to outrun Joe Biden with Hispanic Latino voters. So again, I expect Joe Biden to probably improve amongst Hispanic Latino voters, and just for more than to turn out in general, which is going to really benefit Democrats in Nevada. And there's not that many votes for Republicans to get in these rural areas. For example, 16,000 votes, 3,000. 2,000, 2,000 votes. We're not going to be able to make that up in the rural areas, which we saw in 2022 and 2020. So as long as Democrats can get the base out in Clark County and continue their gains in Reno, they're going to win Nevada by, right now, I think 3 to 4 points, but I can see it being likely for Democrats. In Arizona, this is a state where Democrats were able to flip in a gubernatorial race in 2022. Joe Biden won the state in 2020, and Democrats destroyed Republicans in the Senate race here in 2022, winning by roughly 5 points across the state. And I expect Joe Biden to improve in Maricopa County. He only won his county by 2. He'll probably win it by, 3 or 4 in 2024. You're going to see higher Hispanic Latino turnout. He's going to do better in Tucson, which is where you saw Democrats really shine in the 2022 midterm elections. This is a state where Roe versus Wade is going to have a very negative impact on Republicans. And you're seeing that Roe versus Wade is still helping Democrats a year later after the decision. So again, this is an issue that's probably not going to die in 2024, especially with how much Republicans are talking about it as of currently. So I expect Democrats to probably win here by, probably 2 points in Arizona. I don't think he'll win by Mark Kelly's margin, but I'm confident that Democrats will win in Arizona by, a lean margin. In Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, I could see Wisconsin being tilt, but these states are all very similar. You're going to see higher turnout from black voters in big cities like Detroit, Philadelphia, and Milwaukee, and that's going to benefit Democrats the most, as well as making gains in these suburban areas across the state in Detroit suburbs like Oakland and Grand Rapids or Kent County. You're going to see Democrats improve in the wild counties. Joe Biden is going to improve in these wild counties. You're going to see the Philadelphia suburban counties continue being pretty favorable to Democrats, as well as Democrats doing well in the suburban areas of Allegheny and in the city of Pittsburgh, as well as these college voters across the state coming out big for Democrats across all of them. In Ann Arbor, in Madison, places where Democrats have really been shining as of late. And I do think Donald Trump bring out a lot of white rural voters and white working class voters. I want to say it's impossible for him to win some of these states in 2024, but as of now, I don't think it's the most likely, which is why I categorize them as all being lean. I could see Wisconsin being tilt for Democrats, but for right now, I'm confident that when you saw Republicans have an incumbent and still only win by 1 point against a non-funded candidate, I'm pretty confident Democrats can win by more than 1 point in the Wisconsin. I don't think that these states are going to be huge for Democrats, and I don't think Michigan would be likely like a lot of people expect, but I still think the Democrats would probably win Michigan by 4 to 5, win Pennsylvania by 2 to 4, and win Wisconsin by 1 to 2. In Georgia, this is the last one. Georgia, I expect for Democrats to win here in 2020. I don't think that Joe Biden would do as well black voters as Raphael Warnock was able to, but I still think he'll win Georgia by a pretty sizable margin. I expect him to get out, these urban, college-educated black voters in Fulton County and DeKalb County and Clayton County. That's the 3 biggest vote sourcing counties for Democrats across Georgia, as well as continue these gains amongst these very diverse counties like Gwinnett and Cobb County. I expect Joe Biden to hold his ground with these white suburban voters in the northern Atlanta area, northern Atlanta urban area, Cherokee, Hall, Forsyth County, these counties right here. as well as get the base out, get a lot of these black voters out in other parts of Georgia, like Savannah, Augusta, and Columbus. And I do expect Joe Biden to not do as well as Raphael Warnock there. But realistically, with Donald Trump being on the ballot, you've already seen, high black turnout in Georgia flip the state for Democrats in 2020. Realistically, it's unlikely for that to not happen again, especially considering the circumstances. It is possible for Donald Trump to, get out a lot of white voters in Georgia, which he's going to do, and you see black turnout drop, and Democrats could lose a lot of these states. But for right now, I expect Donald Trump to win here by, I expect Joe Biden to win here by about, 1 to 2 points in 2024. And the last thing I have for both parties in North Carolina, I can see this state going either way. I expect it to be really competitive. When by 2020, Republicans won here by about 1 point. And what I wanted to point out was Joe Biden did not get the black turnout that he expected. This was a really devastating thing for Democrats in North Carolina. They were ranting about this, that they just were not able to hit the numbers they wanted with getting black voters out to the polls, which is something they were able to blow Republicans out the water with in Georgia and blow them out in the water in some of these Rust Belt inner cities. But they were not able to in North Carolina. And even without them doing it, they were still only came up a point short in 2022, even with a significantly wider electorate, they were still able to only lose North Carolina by 3 points, which is really, really good, showing that how even without their most supportive voters coming out, they were still able to remain somewhat competitive. They did better than Hillary Clinton was able to do in 2016 in this state. So with that, I could see if Donald Trump is going to get his white voters out. He's going to get a lot of these working class white voters out to the polls, and it's going to really help him. But at the same time, you've just seen these shifts amongst these college educated voters in Raleigh, and with how fast the minority population is growing in North Carolina, in Charlotte and Raleigh. This is where the biggest vote sources are. Democrats only have to net about 60, 70,000 votes, and these two count, in the state, and considering that they lost North Carolina by 200,000 votes, and they already netted 130,000. They only have to do half of that in 2024. And it's very unlikely because you've seen Democrats really struggle to turn out black voters in North Carolina, and you've seen Republicans be consistent in turning out white rural voters and white working class voters. But it does get to a point where you have to say that it's only a matter of time before Democrats do hit the numbers that they want to win. And the thing is for Republicans in North Carolina is all Democrats really have to do is get black turnout to what it was in 2020, which wasn't even good, to be able to win North Carolina probably. And I expect for it to probably increase narrowly to be able to give North Carolina to the Democrats. In 2024, I could see Republicans winning it. I could see Donald Trump being able to narrowly hold on in the state. As of now, I think that Joe Biden will probably be able to narrowly flip North Carolina. Considering that Beasley only had to have Biden's electorate to win North Carolina in 2022, I do expect, for it to be better black turnout in North Carolina for Democrats, and that would be able to narrowly put them over the top, as well as, the shifts you've seen amongst these college educated white voters in North Carolina. That won't be enough to get Democrats 2020 to winning, but I think it'll be enough to help them along their journey. And this is a very competitive state, so it's easy to go back and forth on because I could realistically see Donald Trump winning it. But for right now, I'm just going to give it to Joe Biden as a tilt margin. So that is my 2024 presidential map. My next video is going to be about Ron DeSantis' announcement and Ron DeSantis' path to 270 and his Republican primary chances. So again, thank you guys so much for tuning into my video. Please subscribe to my channel, Military Election Forecasting. Have a great day, you guys.